Rachel Ventura, Tom Weigel.
All right, if we could all stand for the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we have approval of minutes for October 8th.
Motion. Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, under new business, first up we have zoning case ZC-19-04-3, which is a special use permit for heavy equipment sales and rentals at Green Garden Township at 24149 South LaGrange Road in Frankfort, Illinois, County Board District Number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Zoning case ZC 19-043 takes place in Green Garden Township. You may have recalled familiarity with this area. Earlier this year, the LaGrange Garden subdivision came through to your committee with regards to formally finalizing the plat of subdivision. It was previously rezoned I-1 in 2016. The current applicant is Sunset Water and Sewer, who's actually looking to move to Lot 1 of the subdivision, and the subject zoning case today is regards Lot 2. United Rentals is looking to lease the property to be able to lease and rent portable generators and heating, ventilation, air conditioning units or HVAC units from the subject site. Since it was formerly approved as a sewer and water contracting business, there is screening along the northern property lines, and the existing building on the site provides screening to the west towards LaGrange Road. The applicant's intentions are to improve the property to be able to rent from this, these units from the site. The subject parcel is 4.74 acres, and special use will be applied to the entire parcel. With the requirements of the EcoCat and the NRI, there were no issues present with the development of the site. Staff recommended approval in their staff report, and as such, just to make sure that there is continued compliance with the zoning ordinance, condition number 2 addresses that the applicant applied for a change of use building permit within 6 months should the county board recommend approval. The Planning and Zoning Commission approved the request unanimously with the 2 conditions. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Any? All right, we did have 2 people sign up to speak for this. First, we had Cass Wendland. Sorry if I butchered your name.
Cass Wendland here on behalf of the applicant. I also have the applicant with me, Tom Pleckham, known Sunset Sewer and Water, as well as LaGrange Garden as the record property owner. Also, Joe Moore, who is with us today from United Rentals, proposed operator. As Margie so nicely stated, this property was already zoned I-1. Tom's business has been operating there, heavy equipment contractor, Sunset Sewer and Water. You know, they have big shovels out there, mass excavators, that type of thing. This proposed user, the reason we're here for this special use permit is because United Rentals rents those units. They don't just have them there, and that gets us into the special use category. It's no more intensive use. It's a less intensive use. In fact, by the matter of number of trips, these units, and Mr. Moore can answer questions if any of you like. They go out on long-term deployments of several months. You'll see these big generator units, and they're building down here in the new courthouse, that kind of thing. You'll see them out there. They're new equipment. We also have the full support of the local entities, Green Garden Township, as well as the bank, which supported us unanimously, saying this is the place where they want those type of uses. They want them on LaGrange Road. And so we had their full support, and the village of Frankfort voted unanimously not to file any legal objections. So if there's any questions about traffic, the intensity or type of use, be happy to answer, or have Mr. Moore answer.
Anybody? Benny?
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay, hold on one second. Mr. Moore, did you have anything to add?
No, I do not.
Okay. So it's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we have zoning case ZC-19-050, which is a zoning map amendment from A1 to I1 in Joliet Township, commonly known as vacant property on Burke Drive, County Board District Number 8.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be presenting zoning cases ZC 19-050 and 051 together. You will, of course, be voting on these separately. But these are what we call companion cases. So it is the same request for two separate parcels, which are under separate ownership, separate PIN numbers. But it is the same applicants in this case and the same development proposal. So this takes place in Joliet Township and concerns a 2.882 acre parcel and an 8.6 acre parcel. The applicant is David Denler, and he is represented by Richard Kavanaugh. As I mentioned, this is the same request for both, a map amendment from A1 to I2. The applicant is looking to rezone these two parcels in order to consolidate it with his existing parcel that you can see on the screen there, closest to Cherry Hill Road, and expand his operations. He currently operates a construction business. At the public hearing last week, there were no objectors present to speak about this case. Staff did receive objections from the City of Joliet, which were included in your packets. The City of Joliet was expressing objection because it is not in compliance with their 2007 Southside Comprehensive Plan, which designates these two parcels as residential. The City of Joliet did not submit a formal protest petition or an official legal objection, as we call it. I did not receive any other objections from any of the agencies that were notified. Staff did recommend approval of both of these map amendment requests, and the Planning and Zoning Commission also recommended unanimous approval of both of these rezoning requests. If I can answer any questions.
Questions?
Yeah, in the staff report, there is some information about the soil and I'm guessing water runoff. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Sure. So I know that there are some poor soils on the property, which gave these properties a lower LISA score, which places them into the category of future development of growth. So it's not ideal or prime farmland. And any sort of soil issues will need to be taken into consideration during development of the property.
Motion to approve.
Have they submitted what they do plan to do that? I didn't see that as a condition on here. And then lastly, did Joliet talk about what their south side comprehensive plan would have preferred in that location?
Sure. So the applicant did not submit a formal building permit or site development permit yet, and we don't have a concept plan that was included as part of this. I know the applicant is talking about building, obviously consolidating these three parcels and then building an additional building on that rear portion, very similar to the development that is currently existing on the property. And in regards to the City of Joliet, they designate these two properties as residential. That was what they were looking to see back in 2007. And it is important to note that they're working on updating that plan as we speak, though.
Okay, well, I will point out that the Modern Housing Committee for Will County is also looking in the fact that we need more residential residential locations everywhere in the county, everything from affordable housing upward to market value housing and beyond. So if Joliet is saying that they need this for residential, I think we should take that into consideration.
I would agree if it was located anywhere else. I don't know a lot of people that want their house next to a highway. I mean, near Bolingbrook, in Bolingbrook, at 355 and 55, the interchange there. There was a whole subdivision built, 12-foot sound walls had to be put up. That's going to be an ongoing cost and maintenance issue. You hear the highway noise. I mean, it's tremendous, even with all the trees and things that are in the, in place to kind of help with the sound. I agree we need more residential, but I would not recommend that this be the parcel. I gotta believe that there's a lot of other land that we could put some houses on, including vacant lots in Joliet or vacant lots in other places. To me, anything along the highway probably should be some sort of industrial or agricultural as opposed to residential. That's just me speaking from my own experience. I remember the brouhaha that went up in Bolingbrook even when they extended Kings Road to 95th Street. People being upset that all of a sudden this cornfield was going to be turned into a road and they were going to have a highway in their backyard.
Does the current operation, do they own these two parcels or they're looking to buy them once they're rezoned?
The applicant does own the narrow strip to the north, but they are under contract to purchase the larger parcel, so 050. I believe the attorney is present, and he may speak to if that's different, if the deal is going to.
You can, Mr. Damon, to speak while he's walking down.
I agree with Jackie's assessment that we shouldn't be putting housing right up against an interstate. Also, there's industrial on the other side of the interstate. So this is typically an industrial area, and I think it should stay there.
I made a motion to approve this. I don't know if anyone seconded it.
Does everyone want to second his motion?
Second.
All right, Mr. Damon.
To answer Ms. Ventura's question, we have a contract to purchase the larger parcel. We have purchased that 50-foot strip that runs along the north side of the existing facility west, all the way across the north side of the parcel that we are purchasing.
And is that because you're expanding? I mean, 50 foot is
Right.
not very...
We have a need right now to build another building to house the equipment, the vehicles, and the supplies that are being used in the operation of the business right now. So that would be an immediate, I would think, the spring. Dave?
Yeah,
Spring?
It'd be next time.
That would be the next building built on the site.
Does anybody else on the committee have any questions or comments? Okay, right.
Thank you. I would also agree with Jackie regarding this. Just to the east of this property, we have houses that cut in Cherry Hill South that go right up to the highway of I-80. And in the past, we've had cars that have come off of 80 that have hit this sound wall. The issues that the residents have there is just not worth putting residents that close. The other thing I would point out is that Mr. Demler would have to improve a road as per the highway department. He is willing to put that entire road in for us. The other thing is that when you look at this, the location of the nearest sewer and water to be able to service a residential area is extremely difficult. First of all, they're not going to bore under I-80 because no developer would be able to put that cost onto those houses. The nearest sewer and water is a distance away. And I think when Joliet, and I'm just suspecting this, but I think when Joliet puts their comprehensive plan forward, I think they're going to move that from residential to a light industrial or a commercial area.
That's right. Anybody else? Anybody else? All right, so properly moved and seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we have zoning case ZC-19-051, which is a zoning map amendment from A1 to I2, which is commonly known as vacant property on Cherry Hill Road, Joliet, Illinois, County Board District number 8. This is same thing, so if anybody wants to make a motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Does anybody have any other comments? All right, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So in the past, I've asked for a comprehensive plan to be submitted with this. I mean, when you guys give your final report, is there something you could add to the report that says this is in line with the long-term plans of Burke County? And if those long-term plans don't exist, I would like to get it on the committee agenda to look at what those are. Because again, I don't like voting on these things in a vacuum. Ray, to your point, there is a residential area just north of that that they could have gone down through from New Lenox, but yet they would have had to do some type of agreement between Joliet and New Lenox. It's not unheard of. It happens. I understand the point that was made about the being next to the highway. Although on our own committee, they said the land values at market rate do not allow for building. So we're going to have to think outside the box when it comes to some of these homes, and it may not always be ideal. But I don't want to keep voting on these things in a vacuum, so it would be nice to see long-term, how does this apply to where the county wants to go as a whole, not just this committee, but the entire board. So I'm going to keep kind of giving pushback until we see that, because otherwise it really puts us in a dangerous situation.
All right, since we're on, we'll come back to it. We're under, we still have a zoning case, so if we could do the zoning cases, and we'll come back to that in a second. That's okay with everybody. Okay, John, go ahead.
This county does have a comprehensive plan, and it should be available. I don't know, is it online or not?
It's online, but that's...
Let's.
Thank you. Yes, one of the criteria that we look at with map amendments is conformance with, any of the county's plans. So our plan, the city of Joliet's plan, Village of Lenox, for example, it's number 5 of the map amendment criteria. And I think that we can definitely make that a little bit more clear. The case that was just voted upon was in conformance with our plan. So within this certain development form, which is suburban in this instance, freestanding industry and office is a permitted concept. So our plan, our long-range plan, is a little bit more, it's sort of not as specific as the city of Joliet, which says specifically these parcels should be residential. Ours talks about forms and concepts that would be appropriate in certain areas. But we could make that clear in our reports.
So I'll make a comment later on. We'll go back to that. We'll get you that space.
All right, next up we have number 4, which is zoning case ZC-19-057, which is a zoning map amendment from C3 to I1, special use permit for a storage yard, outdoor, and a special use permit for a self-service storage facility in Joliet Township, commonly known as, 1711 East Laraway Road, Joliet, Illinois, County Board District number 8.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Zoning case ZC 19-057 takes place in Joliet Township and is a 5.897 acre parcel. As you had mentioned, this is a map amendment request from C3 to I1, a special use permit for a self-service storage facility, and also a special use permit for a storage yard outdoor. The special use requests apply to the full parcel. The applicant currently operates Will County Storage from the parcel, and they are looking to expand this use and include outdoor storage in addition to the existing self-service storage facility. On the property, there is a residence, and there are also 2 accessory buildings that are near that residence, so that's on the western portion. The applicant is intending to demolish those structures and replace with the multi-garage units that you commonly see at a self-service storage facility. On the eastern portion of the parcel, there is an existing metal building which will remain, and there will be an outdoor storage yard to the rear of that. Excuse me. Since outdoor storage yards are only permitted in the I1 and the I2 districts as a special use permit, and that is permitted as of right in the I3 zoning district, the applicant must rezone to the I1 district and obtain a new special use permit for the existing self-service storage facility and then also apply for that special use for the outdoor storage yard. So even though the use is existing, it's in relation to a C3 parcel back when it was approved in 2001. Of the agencies that were notified, you will notice that the health department did object to this request. Staff did not add any sort of additional conditions regarding this because health department approval is going to be required as part of the building permit and the site development permit process when the applicant reaches that stage. Staff recommended approval of all of the requests and recommended 2 conditions in relation to the special use for the self-service storage facility. The first condition is just our standard one, but the second condition is actually from the special use which was approved back in 2001. So I just mirrored that same condition and put it on this current one. The special use permit for the storage yard outdoor recommended 7 conditions, and I won't go through each of those, but the one condition that you will see specifically addresses landscaping and screening alongside that storage yard which borders the residential subdivision. That residential subdivision has been there since I believe it was the late 1940s to 1950s, so it predates the actual current operations. But with this improvement, we are going to require some special landscaping that is a little in addition to what is currently required for this development. At the public hearing, we did have one abutting property owner come who lives in that residential subdivision, but they did not object to this request. They were only expressing some concerns about drainage in their existing subdivision. And the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of all of the requests and also with staff's recommended conditions for those special uses. And I can take any questions you might have.
Questions?
So in there, it looks like there is a parking lot that they're putting in for the plan. So with the guy who had the drainage issues, are we adding any special conditions that increase drainage on that property since it will now be paved over?
So they will be required to put in detention due to the size of that development as proposed on that concept plan. And so they will have to be in compliance with our water resources ordinances as well.
And then why did the person deny? You said, not the person who spoke, you said it was the health department. What was the reason for that?
They were concerned about the existing septic system on the property and that it might be impacted by this development. I don't think the health department was aware that that residence is going to be demolished, so that any septic system associated with that would be properly abandoned through the new development.
For the house, perhaps, but if we have an office there, I'm assuming they're still going to have some sort of septic system. And so that was my question. You demolish the house, you don't need the septic for that, but you still have an office because you're running a storage facility. People got to pee. It's just a fact. And there also, I don't remember reading if they were putting in like a paved parking area or if it was just going to be gravel, because there's already like 6 or 8 trailers being stored,
Yes.
RVs, whatever. I can't tell for sure.
I believe it is just going to be gravel at this point that they're putting.
So it'll allow for drainage right by itself, so that brings me back to the detention area for water. I mean, if there's going to be gravel, do they really need a detention thing?
They will. We
Okay.
consider that impervious surface. So basically anything that is not going to be grass. So the building pads, the gravel yard.
So permeable
driveways.
pavers are not permeable pavers?
They're calculated at a different rate, so the way that the water absorbs into the ground. But you're still, it's not
slows
as
it down.
absorbent as just grass.
Just dirt.
Yeah. So due to the square footage that they're proposing, detention will be required.
Any other questions, any comments? All right, we did have 2 people sign up to speak for this, and I'm not even going to try your last name, so I'm to butcher it. We had Demetrius.
Only available for questions.
All right, and Elias, I'm assuming the same. Does anybody have any questions for that?
Actually, I do have one more question. On the long side of your property that butts up to the residential, it looks like on the map that there's like maybe a creek along there because there's all these trees growing.
Yes.
And I'm guessing you're not going to mess with the trees. They're going to get to stay.
Whatever the county requires.
I don't know what. Yeah.
So alongside, that is the property area that we're talking about putting in the landscaping as a buffer and
Okay,
berm.
that is where it's gonna go.
So if the applicant does take out any trees that might be over there, we have a replacement requirement so that you take out one, you're gonna have to put one in
Got it.
if something does need to be removed during development. But that is also your correct, it's a creek and it is a floodplain.
Yeah, it's just nice to have screening.
Yeah.
I mean, who wants to look out their backyard and see a whole bunch of RVs? I mean, not the most attractive. Not that that's your responsibility, sir. It could be a whole cornfield of corn that they get to look at. And some people might not like corn, or the bugs, or the deer, or the raccoons that come along with that. But if the trees were there, I'd like to see that. That is the area where the proposed screening would go.
Yes.
Okay, good.
All right, so we're gonna do different votes for the map amendment and the special use permit. So if we could have a motion to approve
Second.
the map amendment. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, if we could have a motion for a special use permit for the storage yard outdoor.
Motion.
Been
Second.
moved and seconded. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then finally, the special use permit for the self-service storage facility.
Move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So next up, we have other business, which is amending 155-7.30, which is the use table, and 155-18.20, which is definitions of the Will County zoning ordinance for cannabis cultivation center, cannabis dispensing organization, craft grower, infuser organization, and processing organization to reflect the new Illinois State statute.
Thank you.
So I think we'll let David give the rundown, and then Colin can give his presentation, and then we can hold off questions until Colin's done. David?
Just good morning. I'll be very brief. The purpose of this morning's agenda item is just for discussion. Is not a public hearing for the text amendments. Colin's just going to give you some insight as to what will be considered at the public hearing on November 19th at 6:30 p.m. at the Will County Planning and Zoning Commission. He's presenting two different scenarios. One, if the county decides to allow for the recreational uses, or to not allow them. And the purpose of two options is just to be prepared for the county board's decision as to what direction it wants to go, and to also be prepared within the required timeline to be done by the December board meeting. So with that, I'll presentation. Thank you.
Good morning. Yes, we'll be talking about adult use cannabis businesses, is what the official title is called. What I should point out is that Land Use Department is not advocating a position for or against. This is merely a presentation to identify the staff recommended changes to the zoning ordinance, depending on which scenario the county board decides to go with. So if I sound advocate as an advocate, I'm not. I'm just pointing out what we think. So the statute allows for counties to regulate the time, place, manner, and number of cannabis businesses, the distance between such businesses, the distance from sensitive locations, and also on-premise consumption. What counties may not do, according to the statute, is create ordinances which unreasonably restrict the cannabis businesses, and also regulations that are more restrictive than the statute allows. So what we currently have in the zoning ordinance is medical cannabis businesses. And we allow the medical cannabis businesses, the cultivation centers are permitted uses in the agricultural districts and all three industrial districts. The cannabis dispensing locations are special uses in, again, the agricultural district and the industrial districts, but also special uses in the C1 through C4 commercial districts. And within the statute and in our zoning ordinance, they identify several sensitive locations. And they would be the pre-existing public and private preschools, elementary and secondary schools, daycare centers of all types, and also any area zoned residential. Now, for the cultivation centers, there is a setback distance of 2,500 feet, and for the dispensing organizations, their setback is 1,000 feet from those same locations. But also, for dispensing organizations in the statute, it specifies it cannot be located in a house, apartment, condominium, or an area zoned residential. All that's already taken care of. But with the new statute, they've combined the licensing process for the medical cannabis with the adult use cannabis. So this subsection does not apply anymore, which also includes those setbacks for the dispensing organization, and they'll become important later on. So within the statute, there are 6 new cannabis business types. One would be the cultivation centers, which are no more than 210,000 square feet under canopy. That's almost 5 acres. Craft growers, which range between 5,000 and 14,000 square feet under canopy. Processing organizations, infusing organizations, and dispensaries. Now there is the last one, transportation organizations. Those are basically just a licensed transporter from point A to point B, because there's the cannabis cultivators cannot be the same as the cannabis distributors. So there has to be some transportation between those two, and that's the organization that moves it between the two. And in Will County, they become required if they are moving more than 15 miles. In DuPage and Lake County, it would be 2 miles, and I can't remember what Cook County is. It's really minuscule. But since they are not a land use, we will not be regulating them in the zoning ordinance. So, what can we regulate? Well, first, it said time. So, currently, under the current regulations for medical cannabis, the Will County zoning ordinance does not have any restrictions on operating times. But in the new legislation, the statute says that dispensaries may only operate between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. And since the county may not enact regulations more restrictive, there really isn't a point. So we're recommending that we do not necessarily need to regulate operating hours. Place and manner. I'm combining both of those because we really don't regulate the manner. We do not regulate the fencing, we do not regulate security, we don't regulate, again, times of operation that would be considered a manner. But for us, it's just in the location. So what we're recommending for the adult use cannabis is kind of mirror that same language with the cultivation centers and the craft growers, those that grow, in the permitted uses in the A1 and the I districts, and then the processors, the infusers, and the distributors as special uses in the A1 I districts and the C1 through C4 commercial districts. Number of such businesses. All right. So Will County does not regulate the number of businesses of these types in the medical area. The unincorporated area does not have any medical cannabis businesses currently on the books. There is one distributor in the Rockdale, Joliet area, and that's pretty much it. For the adult use cannabis, there are the licenses to be issued by the state. There will be 30 cultivation centers statewide. There will be 100 craft grower licenses statewide. I haven't been able to figure out the processors, how many licenses there will be. But infusers, only 40 licenses. And for dispensaries, there would be 85 statewide 47 of which would be in the Chicago metro area. And Will County constitutes 8% of that. So if they are going to be issuing licenses based on population distribution, Will County could expect between 3, maybe 4 dispensary type licenses for the entire county, not just the unincorporated areas. And as such, because not expecting a large demand in the unincorporated areas, we would not recommend regulating the number of businesses. Distances between such businesses. We do not have a separation distance between them. But the new legislation does. For dispensing organizations, they cannot be within 1,500 feet of another dispensing organization. And also for craft growers, they cannot be within 1,500 feet of another grower or cultivation center. Since counties cannot enact ordinances more restrictive, we recommend that we don't necessarily need to regulate the distances between businesses. However, distances from sensitive locations. Currently, we do have that long list of preschools, schools, and daycares. So 2,500 feet from cultivation centers and 1,000 feet from dispensaries. Now, the new legislation also allows counties to regulate distances from colleges and universities. But the unincorporated Will County, that's really not an issue since everything is in within a municipality. So we recommend mirroring the current language and having cultivation centers and craft growers 2,500 feet from sensitive locations and processors, infusers, and dispensaries 1,000 feet from the sensitive locations.
We're going to do questions at the end. Just so we can finish and then...
Okay, I mean, I just don't, when you're talking about distances, they include the locations of municipal?
No.
No, okay. Thank you.
So on-premise consumption. Currently, Will County does not have any regulations about on-premise consumption, such as cigar lounges and hookah bars. We don't have that. So we recommend not adding that kind of regulation in any way for adult use cannabis. It's just something we as staff don't want to get into, and of course, through the board, we can get into that. So, what does it look like if the county board decides to opt in? We would add in, we would remove the language about medical cannabis, and just make it cannabis. And so it would be cannabis cultivation centers and craft growers, cannabis dispensing organizations, cannabis infusing organizations, and cannabis processing organizations. And then take the state statutes, definitions, again, take out the medical cannabis language, and then add in for each one the distance separation that's required. So cannabis cultivation, 2,500 feet, cannabis dispensing, 1,000 feet, craft grower, that's a very long definition. But then for us, adding in the 2,500 feet, the infuser, 1,000 feet, and processing, 1,000 feet. But as we all know, other counties are doing other things. This is what our neighboring and nearby counties are doing. Some are approving adult use cannabis sales businesses. Others are prohibiting it. So what if the county wants to go with the opt-out? Again, take those same definitions from the statute and then simply decide that they are prohibited, specifically prohibited. That way, because our ordinance does have language that says if something is similar and consistent with another identified use, that the zoning administrator has the authority to make that determination. By doing this, because the statute allows us to specifically prohibit adult use cannabises, we would need to do that so we don't get into that trick bag of having the zoning administrator going, oh, we can do that now. And don't know.
All right, Vicki.
I have a bunch of questions. Oh, my. All right, so the first thing, you made a comment, and I just want to make sure that everybody understands. We're already in. We don't have to opt in. He made the comment that if the county decides to opt in, we are in, understanding that. Hookah and cigar bars, I didn't understand anything that you said about that. I'm guessing what you're saying is we're not addressing the ability to set up cannabis smoking lounges?
Correct.
Okay, so basically it's to be consumed in your home, just as the medical cannabis is. I don't know what the rules are, though, about smoking in your own backyard. I do know you can't drink publicly. You can't take a bottle of beer and walk up and down your street, except for perhaps when you're having a block party, which we do every year, and nobody ever comes to get us and lock us up. But I would definitely wonder about that. No medical distributors in unincorporated Will County currently, is that?
Correct.
Were there ever any?
Yeah, there's one in Mokina.
That's
My
what-
district.
That's industrial. Oh, Mokina, that's,
Mokina is
Oh.
a medical facility.
oh, there's one in Mokina too?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
But is it incorporated? Because I think there's something in Romeoville too, but
But
it's
when he talks about in
incorporated.
the county, you're just talking about unincorporated.
No, he said unincorporated Will County.
Yeah, we don't have anything.
Okay. And then the other concern, and maybe I'm unfairly concerned, but sometimes municipalities do silly things. We had in the city, the village of Bolingbrook, our school district, decide to build a high school across the street from a pawn shop. Literally across the street, probably 50, 100 feet tops. And that pawn shop sells guns. And that normally wouldn't have been permitted for the pawn shop to open, but since the school came later, it was okay. And and again, this may not be something that we can regulate because of the way the law is worded, we can't make things tighter. But I think the state should have put something in there because we have a huge unincorporated Will County. And let's say, people start having babies even faster than they already are, and some new villages crop up and incorporate, and new schools are needed. I mean, it sounds like they've made it difficult then for people to build a school after a cannabis place opens, because you're restricted on what land you can use because of the square footage away. So that was the only thing that concerned me, honestly, was the fact that they talk about that only as a pre-existing condition, because towns change and grow. We didn't have a high school in Bolingbrook where it is now. When I was growing up, needs change, and school districts are generally pretty cash-strapped, or at least pretend to be cash-strapped, and you don't want to force them to buy land that's more expensive just because of an existing business. So that seemed rather unfair to me, but that's more of a statutory thing that I think they should change. But I am concerned about the hookah cigar bar thing, because, I don't know, we let people go into bars and drink and then get in their vehicle and drive. Happens every day. Talk to some of the mayors around here.
Rachel?
Okay, so I have a couple of clarification points, but first I want to say, can we offer the PowerPoint presentation, not just yours, but any of them in the agenda, so that if we need to share that with a constituent, we can do that. Otherwise, all I have is the whereas language, which I'm not going to see. Okay, so then the initial medicinal was offered as permittable for growers in I. Was there any discussion when that was passed why it was permittable versus now? I guess for that first section, it would still be permittable, but everything else is social use. Was there any discussion back when it was passed for medical?
I'm not privy to that. It's additional memory. David?
Anyone know?
Come on, Jim.
What was the question? I'm looking at something, I'm sorry.
I need to tune out and talk six.
Yeah.
Just kidding. When this was initially passed for medicinal uses, in the agriculture, I understand that, but in the industrial area, it was allowed for permittable use as opposed to special use. Was there any reasoning behind that then that would help
I think we were just looking for what we felt was the most appropriate, and I do believe there was probably some recommendations from the staff. And that particular growers, I mean, it was a little different. So I think that we were just looking at the best places. Agriculture was a given.
Right.
But also under industrial, when you understand it, most of it's inside and it's, like, say, big greenhouses, we just thought it would also be appropriate. In both cases, those zonings are generally away from residential development. So
my other question
that's what I
is,
think it was.
would they have to, if they're growing it, you know, these are cultivations they're growing, do they need to rezone, or it's okay to be I if they're growing and have a greenhouse if they're then cultivating it and preparing it?
I'm not understanding.
It's already,
So do they need, I mean, if I'm growing it and then
it's already a
I'm
permitted use.
preparing it.
Oh,
what's our
if you're
permitted
preparing it, that requires a special use.
Okay.
You can only grow it.
What does a cultivation center then do?
Grow it.
They just grow it?
Just grow it.
Okay, so my question then is, why would it be unindustrial? Why wouldn't it be agriculture then?
Because it has to be in a building.
Yeah, it has to be
It has to be
indoors.
inside.
Okay.
They'd have to build a building on the farm.
And that makes it not agriculture anymore because it's inside a greenhouse? It just seems weird to me. Okay.
And we didn't wind up with any growers, so we have none.
Right, the 3 paragraphs at the end then that are in red here, what you're saying is this is the same as the state statute then? You didn't make any changes, including the 1,000 feet, but you kept that all the same as the state then?
Yeah, because we can't go more restricted.
Yeah, we can't go more.
Okay, I'm just making sure that this language then is basically standard statute. If someone says, well, why did you do that? I can say, well, this is what the state,
Right.
because I am getting questions about this, so I want to be very clear when I answer people.
Yeah,
Then,
we're modeling this very, very closely to the state statute.
okay. Then you talked about the 3 to 4 dispensaries in Will County, but like Joliet has a medical one,
Right.
Kena has one. So how does this affect, like if they decide to move over to recreational, that uses up all of our licenses? Is that what we're projecting?
Yes, we're projecting, based on population only, that there would probably be 3, maybe 4 dispensaries in Will County.
And do we know how many current medicinal dispensaries we have at this time?
Apparently 2. I thought it was just 1, but apparently there's one in Mokina for 2.
Okay.
So Romanville and Mokina, that's correct.
There's one in Romanville too?
Yes. Yeah, medical.
Yeah, medical.
Oh, okay.
Do we not know what's going on?
Yeah,
No.
medical, we have one at Creek in Joliet.
Yeah,
Joliet has one.
Yeah, that's the only one that I know of.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to know what we have and where it's located.
Because it makes a difference if we can only get 3 or 4 of the licenses in total of the whole state, and we have 3 or 4 already in the county.
Yeah, then we're
Well,
not
we'd be
getting-
pretty dumb not to move this forward because it's already here, we can't get any more.
But isn't that different? Because 3 or 4 dispensaries you're talking about, right?
Correct.
It's completely different than
I thought they
the
were
medical.
outside that number.
Medical facilities.
This is the total licenses, so your dispensaries are 85, but 47 of them have to be in Chicago metropolitan region. And divided by population gives us 3 to 4 in our area.
Medical dispensaries can't apply to get a recreational license.
Right.
They have to do it as a separation of the building, but they can be in the same location.
How can they do that if the village opts out of recreational?
Then they can't.
So then how do these existing medical ones count, or maybe they don't count, in the 3 to 4
They don't count.
recreational?
Okay, based on the statute, it was all licenses after July 19th.
All license.
Right, so after July 19th, medical and adult use are combined.
So we can only have a total of 47, period.
For 4 in our
4.
area, because 47
And we
is
may
inside
already
the county.
have them.
We already have that.
Right, maybe done,
David?
especially if they have them.
I think it's appropriate, like Colin did, to kind of bring up some generalities regarding projections on number of licenses, but it is somewhat subjective. It's just, based upon population. So I wouldn't put a lot of, weight on that. And the other thing to take into consideration too is the fact that if the state decides to go up the number at some point, this really doesn't mean anything. So it's, again, it's very subjective.
Committee members, Steve?
Yeah, I find a little bit of problem. The cities are deciding whether to opt in or opt out, correct?
They're deciding to
And-
opt out.
Well, some of them.
They don't opt in.
Okay, Steve has
You're
no
correct, I'm sorry. Right? If they decide to opt out, well, why do they have to do anything, to even be considered opted in, if we can't have any more dispensaries anyway?
Well, we don't know.
I mean, if we're only allowed 4,
They can
they
change
can't,
the
there's
number
more
at
than
any
4
time.
cities in Will County, so
They have to apply for that.
it doesn't make sense. There's something illogical about what we're hearing. Because you got at least, I would say there's at least 30 cities. So are all these cities going to be told that if they decide to stay in, are they going to be told they can't sell it? And the answer to that is no. So something's wrong here. I don't know what it is, but something's wrong. We don't got the right information.
Okay, the opt-in, opt-out argument.
Opt-out.
Opt-out, sorry, thank you. Opt-out is not only for dispensaries, but for all of the cannabis businesses. The craft growers, the cultivation centers, the infusers, and processors. So when you opt out of all of them.
So there's a question. Do we have the ability to opt out only of craft growers? Or only of growers? Or opt out only of dispensaries, but not of growers?
No, I don't believe so. See it around.
Well, in this case, it's out or you're in.
It's like gambling.
Well, Collins, thanks. Yeah, Mr. Guzman, do you have?
That's not, I'm not sure if that's spelled out, but I think the logical answer is you can't pick and choose.
Okay.
I think the logical answer is if you're either going to do it or not.
Yeah, the way I see-
Sometimes logic doesn't apply to our laws.
Because everything's identified as cannabis business establishments. So, which is
Tyler?
The whole.
I would let committee members go first, and then I'll come. Rachel?
Okay, so on here, we have Kendall and McHenry, and they've opted in, but with approved, or they've approved to, it's written on here, that's why I said it.
They're not opting out.
I know, but he wrote it on here that way, so
I
what I
know.
wanted to say on here though is they've got business, which obviously we don't have a zoning for that, and they have this M1, M2.
right, manufacturing.
What is that compared to ours?
There'll be the light and heavy. Light
Okay,
and
so
heavy
it's like
industrial.
I for those
I,
M's,
yep.
and then their business is what our C?
Yes.
Okay. So to Jackie's question though, the McHenry one does say the dispensary in one area. I mean, I don't think that we should do that. I like what you presented here, but it does sound like we could separate where they're zoned at and make it more difficult. But I don't think so. To Steve, your point, I think there's that fear factor that, oh my God, if we allow this, which is already allowable by the state, then this is going to be everywhere and people are going to be doing this whole big thing. And so I think that's what we're seeing in these cities who are opting out. But I do think the realization, at least in the next few years, I understand what David's saying about it being subjective, is that those first few years they roll it out, it's going to be pretty set to a very limited amount of licenses just because of what's available here. And then if they increase the licenses, you know, we go while allow unlimited licenses, then, you know, maybe we need to go back and look at the ordinances and the zoning at that time. But at this point, it is very few in the entire state. And so there's going to be this fear that, oh my God, there's going to be one on every block. It's just, that's not the reality of how this bill is written.
You know, the problem that I see is that all these cities are in turmoil right now, fighting among their boards, because a lot of them are split, whether they opt out or not. Well, if there's only going to be 4 licenses, and we might already have all 4, it's either the law is written wrong or the cities are misinterpreting it, because if there's only going to be 4 allowed and we already got 4,
I think it just has
okay, then it doesn't matter what they do. There's no benefit or consequence by doing nothing for a city because they're not going to get one anyway, according to what we're hearing
There's a
here.
chance we might not get one in. I mean,
Right,
you
but what
apply
I'm
the
saying is,
licenses and then hope you
if
get it.
that's the case, there's no need for a vote because there's not going to be one anyway.
You know, it's not just dispensaries, it's for all those businesses. There's licenses for all those businesses. So there'll be, we'll expect around 8% of licenses for craft growers, 8% licenses for cultivation centers. So there is still a need for
Well, I understand the cultivation center part, but when these cities are voting, they're talking about dispensaries. They're not really looking at the rest of it. And obviously, from what you're saying, if that's correct information, which I probably think it is, there's no need to even have a vote. They can't have one anyway.
Even
Right?
with the 100 licenses for craft growers, 8% of that is 8. 8 growers in all of Will County. I agree, Steve.
It's
Right,
stupid.
let it opt in and let's see how it plays
I mean,
out.
the
And
whole
we get
thing
to
is
tax-
nuts.
Hopefully we'll tax the money to bring in.
Well, I don't like the
We're
tax.
all-
The dollars
we're
to
not
enforce
talking-
it.
we're not talking
Don't
tax,
get
but
him
this
started
is-
on it.
Yeah,
But you know what? We got to have the right information, or these cities are a bunch of goofballs.
Yeah,
They are.
I agree.
You know, 'cause
They are.
they're voting on this stuff, and everybody's fighting with each other. 'Cause I know
For no
my
good
town,
reason.
there's all kinds of
Paranoia.
arguments.
Does anybody else on the committee have questions for Colin? Jackie?
The dispensaries can only be in the industrial area, right?
and the agriculture.
In the agriculture.
Oh, no, dispensaries would be available in agricultural, the industrials, and the C1 through C4
Okay.
as special uses.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Committee, anything else? Tom?
We've got the opt-in or opt-out.
Out only.
Opt-out only. Are we going to vote on that today, or is that just?
With this, land use does not opt in or opt out, we just deal with zoning. We're not opting, that's the executive, it's not us.
That's going to happen this month at the county board.
21st.
Right, so what I'm presenting is the two options, depending on how the board decides to go with that resolution. So there'll be the possibility of zoning ordinance A or zoning ordinance B, depending on what the final decision of the board is.
So we're going to recommend
Both of these go forward?
Correct.
public hearing.
Yeah, so that way, because we'll know next month what to vote on. So we're gonna go Julie.
Thank you, Tyler. My next two questions and suggestion is based on my participation in October in the IAPD, the Illinois Association of Park Districts. They held an event called Weed in the Parks. It was at Donata, very well attended. Counties all over this region, law enforcement, from park districts to sheriffs, a lot of representation there. They were discussing these topics. So these are two of my concerns based on my participation there and meeting with other county staff, park district staff, what they're doing. The hours of operation, very, very broad. I'm, open at, I think it was 6 a.m. I don't have the slide till 10:30. I would like to recommend that you consult our law enforcement, because the general consensus there at the Weed in the Parks was that there's a concern. And 10:30 at night might be difficult if they don't have enough officers on staff. So my recommendation is to maybe take a look at that. I don't know why the hours are so long or why they need to be. So I'm just going to put that out there, because based on my discussion with all of these other members, that was a little broad.
I'm confused as to what you're asking for. You're asking for extended hours, or
No, I said
we can't make it more restrictive.
Can't make it Cannot make it more restrictive. If you'd like them to be open till 4 a.m., we can do that, just like the local bars.
The second item is that they specifically discussed consumption or tasting or sampling at their dispensaries. Nobody was allowing that. One of the biggest problems they found was that they didn't want people sampling and then getting in their car and driving away high. They also discussed a problem that some of law enforcement is experiencing, where people would drive away, then pull into a nearby parking lot and partake in their latest acquisitions. So these are all things that I didn't see addressed.
They have drive-through liquor stores.
Julie has the floor.
I'm not kidding.
Let Julie
They have
go. She has the
drive-through
floor.
liquor stores in Missouri.
But I do, these are valid points, I believe, and other people are talking about these issues and experiencing them. So I'd like to have that conversation.
For the hours of operation, it cannot be more restrictive than what the statute already allows. So we cannot narrow that window.
Okay, and our law enforcement is on board with this. We brought them in.
This is state statute. I have no idea what law enforcement has to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, under a map amendment or a text amendment, townships would have the ability to object moving forward. We've seen a lot of talk about these communities opting in and opting out, or opting out. I don't want to say opting out, Jackie. I want to know if if we have the ability to write in this ordinance that no dispensary will be located within X amount of feet, miles, mile and a half, whatever the jurisdiction, whatever we decide, of a community that has opted out. Because, for instance, there are places in Plainfield, Naperville, my entire district, New Lenox, Mokina, and Orland Park, Homer. I mean, I think it would be the right thing to do if the county were to say, you cannot have this within a mile and a half jurisdiction of the town that's opted out.
I don't see that being a possibility. However, those municipalities do have the option for map amendments and special uses filing the
No, for a special use, they cannot file the objection.
Joliet had challenged that, and it was decided that yes, they can.
So the state's attorney's office is saying we can't.
And how did Joliet get away with it?
I'm not aware of it.
See, I thought townships could, but apparently
townships can't.
So I'm just saying, I believe that there's a lot of talk. If we're only going to get 3, or we're only going to get 4, we could put them in the parts of the county that you know, that maybe they want them. But if we arguably can say that all these communities that opt out, if we could give them a buffer and protect them as well, I think that would be a good thing and it would go a long way for the residents.
I have to think about that one. It might be doable, but I'm not entirely sure. I think.
Because there's a lot of towns that look like this.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And then you have the unincorporated and incorporated that says no, no, no. Just like the burning. We have the issues with the burning constantly because this guy on this street, you know, you're not allowed to burn. And 17 feet away, you're an unincorporated and you're allowed to burn. And it's just blowing around. I just think if you give them some kind of buffer, same thing. You know, I just think this is a good to look at.
Jackie?
I mean, whether or not they have the right to object, or legal standing to object, obviously, even when people object, we don't necessarily follow their lead. We had an objection on case number 2 today, and we approved case number 2. So,
I agree. But
I mean, we take it into consideration and give it the weight it deserves, but I mean...
There's a difference between filing and just saying I object and filing a legal objection. If the town files a legal objection and forces us into a supermajority vote, then I will say, if supermajority votes to put it in there, then you know what, then that's our decision to say, town, we know you're opted out, but we want to put that right there and we believe it's a good place.
I didn't know about that.
But it does give them a mechanism.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that if there was certain standing, there could be a legal objection and then you had to have a higher vote.
But just saying I object is one thing, but filing a legal objection does force the county.
Okay, no, I didn't even know that. Go ahead.
Okay, I'd like the state's attorney to maybe answer this. Why can't they, what is about the special use that they can't have a legal objection now?
State statute.
It says in there?
State statute.
I told you, Springfield passed
On
a
it, is it
goofy
specifically
law.
on a special use? It's
Special use, yes.
permittable.
Map amendments and text amendments, you file a written protest, and you have to, but it's got to have a certain majority or meet other certain criteria. Once you've done that, then it does kick in the supermajority vote at the county court. On a special use permit, there's nothing in the state statutes that allows for a written protest to be filed, i.e.
And we can't add that to be more restrictive?
You can't.
Is that what it
It's
is?
not just
Oh, it says it's, you can't do it, it's not just, it's admitted, it's actually,
No, we can
admitted,
make
it's not
it
permitted.
allow it. It's,
Right, but we can put it in our ordinance, not, so it's a
Well, I don't
different
like
way.
the buffering thing, but I do like the idea that they have the ability to give us some type of supermajority, that's what I was asking. Is it actually omitted, or is it saying you can't do it? You know, I don't necessarily know about the buffering, because maybe people do want it after the fact. I'm not sure, I don't know that that's gonna be the problem going forward. But if people are unincorporated, they might feel just as penalized if you're saying, oh no, because you happen to be close to a city that opted out, now you can't have in your area. I'm not sure that I like that as a solution either. The best solution is having a conversation with the people in that area, both unincorporated and the city borders. So how can we allow for that and stay within the statute?
That's a great point. So
We
if
have
you
a-
allow the townships to file the legal objection, the townships are representing the incorporated and the
Unfortunately,
unincorporated.
townships are no longer able to file legal objections once we hit over 500,000 people.
All right.
Great.
Springfield has all the answers, I guess.
No, they're all messed up. What are we trying here, Ray?
All right.
We have another problem. The mayor of the city of Lockport called me up about 2 weeks ago and said if they opt out, does that mean that the county can decide not to opt out? So I'm going along with the right language. And then there's pockets in the city of Lockport of subdivisions that are unincorporated. So that means that if you're in like Bonnie Bray, Forest Manor, or one of the other ones, Fairmont, okay, so those unincorporated ones are surrounded by cities on all sides.
They're residential.
They're residential, but it's
You can't
surrounded.
build there. You can't do it.
Yeah, but, no, that's what I'm saying. The city's saying no. They're not all residential.
But you can't.
They're not all residential.
Up the main road.
There's commercial in one of them, for sure. I know that. But the point being that what do we do about cities that opt out? And then if we don't say nothing, that means we're automatically in. So now those little bitty pockets that are in cities that opted out can, if the laws, we're told now that the law's screwed up, but I think they'll make an arrangement to fix that because they're going to want as many as they can get so they get more tax money. But what do we do about somebody that has maybe a mile radius of unincorporated area surrounded entirely by a city, which is in Lockport? Do they get to say they want one? Because the city says no?
We'll let David.
I mean, would you say that's okay?
We'll let David.
Colin, correct me if I'm wrong. With the language in the zoning ordinance, if the county chooses to not opt out, for recreational uses, it would require a special use permit for retail.
Right.
Any kind of, except for the cultivation centers, okay? Anything else would require a special use permit.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Then special use permit process, although there may not be an objection authority by a corporate entity, there would still be notifications given to townships, municipalities, and otherwise that would have the opportunity to go through the public process and object verbally or in writing, even though they may not have a legal authority to affect the vote requirement. They would still have the opportunity to come all the way through the board to let the elected make a decision as to whether or not they want to allow it.
That's correct.
Judy?
Yeah, so that is what I was going to say, Steve. Those little pockets, we could just say we're not going to approve a special use permit because of that situation. What I think I asked before, but I'd like to ask again, can we get a growing list of the communities that have voted on if they want to allow or not allow cannabis to be sold in their areas? It would be nice for us to have that as a background. The towns. The towns in Will County. I don't care about other counties. It's irrelevant to us. That's their decisions.
I mean, it would also be helpful if we had a list that's just all the growers, any business that has anything to do with cannabis
That exists today,
that
yeah.
is in Will County, and a list of
And I had one other question too. I know that originally we had it split out by medical and then not medical, recreational. Why do we change to just going with one? Because I thought.
It's out there.
Is
There's
it
two.
out there?
One of them is if we opted out, that's the second one, and it does show.
Both.
Yeah, and then the other one is if we do nothing, how do we prepare for our zoning to be in line?
All right, I
with the
missed
state
that.
statute?
Okay, good. Because I think we should keep it. All right, that's all thanks.
Gloria?
Well, I was just going to ask that if you, like Tyler asked about a list of companies that we already have that are manufacturing or selling medically, can we see it on a map so we can see kind of where those locations are? And what is really us unincorporated and what areas we are actually affecting.
I can sure try.
Thank you.
Mike?
All right, two things. One, this is why when we vote in November, I'll be voting to opt out. This is exactly what we heard at NACO, that those areas that put recreational in said, wait. There's other counties that want to put it in right now. We can learn from all our mistakes before we put it in, and then we get stuck with all of the issues. But the other question I have is, even if we opt out, medical's still here, and the medical card holders will be allowed to grow 5 plants in their home for their own use. Are we able to put any restrictions on that at all? No. I mean, if it's a shed that they say they're living in, they can do it. If they're venting it out to the neighbor's house because the stuff does smell, if they're venting it out, we have any control over that in land use?
Let's see. No unit of local government may prohibit home cultivation.
Well, that's kind of what's prohibited. We're going to say, yeah, okay, you can grow it, but you can't vent out the smells to your neighbor's house because this stuff is going to happen. And I'm more concerned about that than the big growers, because if you have 300 medical holders and they can all grow, you are going to have issues.
We don't do that with tobacco today.
I don't know how many people grow tobacco.
Well, we're venting it out, but
They don't call tobacco skunk weed, and there's a reason.
I don't like smelling tobacco. So.
I don't like smelling it when I walk out the door of the children.
But tobacco doesn't have any sense of smell unless you're smoking it.
Right, you're not growing 5 tobacco plants in your house and venting. I mean, you've all seen stories of the illegal guys that have grown marijuana in their homes and they're venting out outside.
They're smoking?
No, the
No,
smell.
no,
The plant has the
plant smell.
Just the growing.
That's why it's called, so when they grow it in a home, instead of venting it outside, there's been numerous documentaries on this. They vent the smell of the plant outside. And unfortunately, neighbors complain. That's how they've busted a lot of these homes that were growing it illegally in there because of the smell that it creates. If we can't regulate that, we are going to have an issue. Just saying.
So if we opt out, can you opt back in at any time?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Jim?
Yeah, I just want to maybe get some clarification on the distance this again. One is, so was it 1,500 square feet count? Is that what it was? You didn't have establishments with 1,500 feet?
So what?
Can we let the ability to go further apart if we choose? I mean, because we actually, so we can.
For sensitive let's see, I'd have to look at the medical cannabis restrictions. This is based on what we had for the medical cannabis. So I have to look at what medical cannabis has. So I don't know, but it would not be unreasonable to do that for the adult use cannabis.
Because what I'm thinking is you know, maybe we could say they have to be 5,000 establishments within 5,000 feet of each other. That doesn't almost a mile apart. Something along those lines. If we can do that, I'd like to at least throw out the idea of that.
I'm sorry, Jen. For between businesses?
Correct.
Okay, for between businesses, no, we cannot do that.
You cannot.
No.
We have to use that whatever.
1,500 feet for
Just sensitive location.
just the sensitive locations we can regulate, not the businesses themselves.
And so then I'm going to assume that we don't have the ability, but I'm going to ask, do we have the ability to say we're not going to put it within 3,000, 4,000 feet of a municipal boundary? I'm just
That's not
throwing out the
sensitive
idea.
location.
I mean, if we can't do it, then I want to see if we could do it.
But it says we have the ability to regulate place.
Right.
Right on it.
I'm hesitant to say yes, but I think it might be possible.
Yeah, the other thing I would suggest is, we're presenting C1 through C4. Now, I think we should make it a C2, take out the C1. C3 is almost an industrial type zone. And C4 is, you have to refresh my memory, it's more along the lines of something that's along the highway or something that has multiple uses. But I'm thinking that we should maybe restrict it. C1, I think, is too light because that's very neighborhood related. I think C2 is actually where it belongs, and maybe strictly a C2. I don't think that, and then I guess I look at you, we have the ability to do that, correct?
I'm sorry, zoning.
Yeah, I'm talking about the zoning
Are we
classification.
already in C1 with medical? So we can't take that out because we'd be more restricted.
No, that's just our decision.
We don't have any unincorporated Will County.
We can make that change for medical, yes.
We have no, right now we have no dispensaries in unincorporated Will County.
I understand. Didn't we have restrictions on it?
No.
No. So, whether you want to include one, maybe say, okay, we allow C2 and C4. I'm just wondering if we can take another look and maybe restrict the zoning classifications where to be allowed. I think that can go a long way. C2 is still neighborhood, but it's a little bit more have to be on a main highway or something, not in the middle of a neighborhood. So I'm just wondering if we can take a look at that, and maybe staff could even come back with a recommendation that would narrow that, rather than just throw in all our C classifications. That's all I wanted to correct.
I would like to see a map of the different C areas, just along with wherever any dispensaries are in our county. I think a picture is worth 1,000 words.
All right, anybody else? Come on down to the podium.
Hi, I'm Wendy Hill with the Wilmington Coalition for a Healthy Community. We are an opt-out community, so that gives you a little bit of a perspective. I just wanted to point some things out that you're going back and forth on. The county does need to say something. Wilmington has opted out, but our school district has 5 different municipalities in it. So we, as a group and an organization working with our youth, have gone to these other 4 districts and said, hey, will you at least give us a proclamation of support? And some of them are like, yeah, absolutely. And some of them are like, no, we gotta leave that up to the county. So the townships are looking to you to lead and set an example. And I'm asking you to do that one way or the other. I would like to also ask, in the sensitive areas, it's almost comical how they've made colleges and higher education schools not sensitive areas, because that's their target market. That's a target-rich environment, and it's just like showing Joe Camel to a bunch of high schoolers. So I think I just want you to think about that strategic move there that they did, And I also want to ask, and I haven't been able to do the research yet, but are parks considered special areas that are going to be excluded from this? Because I can tell you, they're going to go to the parks, they're going to walk around, they're going to be sitting on swings, smoking this stuff, and the 2-year-olds are going to have to leave. I'm just being honest with you. So if you can incorporate parks, your baseball parks, your recreational areas for non-use and make it a special zone of exclusion, I just want to point that out, that I believe that should be done. Also, I want to point out about the language to keep it separate. You're considering changing taking out medical versus non-medical or medical versus adult use. There are only 2 counties left in Colorado that are still in. They have learned their lesson and they are slowly and have opted out. They've learned later. So it is my advice that you keep your different language for medical versus non-medical. Medical's not going to go away, and there are necessary times for that. And I absolutely agree with that. But I advise you to keep your medical and your non-medical language separate. And if the verbiage is exactly the same in one section as it is in the next section, at least they're separate and they can be changed separately. Because you're going to learn later that you might have wished you opted out, is my belief. And then also, this program is basically a pilot. So I'm going to address the number of issues of licenses that will be issued. That will be increased. We are in Wilmington, and there is no limit on the amount of liquor licenses. So there is 22 liquor licenses to serve a population of 5,000 people. Exactly, I agree with you, and we're working on that. Shame on us, and we're working on it. But don't think that won't apply also to marijuana licenses. They're going to keep increasing them, just like they're going to keep increasing the gambling licenses. It's going to happen. So you need to prepare yourself and have the language separate for medical versus non-medical, and realize that, and it's only 4 now, but it'll be more later. And if we don't do something about it now, I believe you'll be able to walk into a gas station in 20 years and buy a pack of marijuana cigarettes. So I think you need to think about that proliferation and consider it down the road. And I just, like I said, I want to go back to you, the prohibit versus regulation. Yes, please regulate. Wilmington is a perfect example of the, we want out, but literally across the street is township, is county. And it's ripe for development. And that's what's going to come in. So I ask you to please consider, we can't prohibit it, fine, but you can regulate where it goes. So please be considerate of the communities that have opted out. Plainfield's a perfect example. I'm just trying to build that gap. I've been in communication with your GIS department. I've tried. And there's holes all over all of these communities that are not incorporated, that are regulated by you. So we hope you will consider that regulation that you were suggesting. That is a formidable idea. I appreciate that. As a community that has opted out. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I just want to follow up one more time, Mr. Chairman, to ask that you be able to ask the state's attorney and just get an opinion on whether we could. And I just want to, I'm only really talking about the area around me because I understand my area, but I know each and every one of you have the same situations. But to give you an idea, Mr. Musa's district and Amanda Cook's district, we have Lincoln Way East and Summit Hill School, Lincoln Way North, all in unincorporated areas that have acceptable zoning just outside the 2,500-foot mark that they could put these dispensaries. In my district, in Mr. Weidel's district, we have Lincoln Way West, we have Lincoln Way Central. All of these districts are in unincorporated, located within, I mean, right around that 2,500-foot mark away from somewhere that could accept these locations. I'm just asking if we can get clarification. I'd like to get, I know there's a lot of balls in the air and a lot of people don't understand, can we, can't we? on my sheet it says we could designate place. If for some reason we could do that, that would eliminate all the major high school districts and a couple districts from having these located nearby, and I think it would probably do the same in a lot of other districts as well.
Thank you, Rick.
Okay, I want to reiterate a few things. Ray, to your point, by having it as special use, we have the ability on this board to say no. I mean, most high schools are in some type of residential area. Most parks are in a residential area, so already that's opted out, right? So then when we have something presented to us, if it's right across from a park that happens to be, I don't know, in a commercial area or something for some weird reason, we as a board could say, well, that doesn't make any sense for us to allow that. So I think it's very important that we don't forget that special use gives the ability, not just to this board, but to the county board as a whole, that we can then have that conversation that comes back. To the point about the special sensitive areas of colleges, that is why it is a sensitive area, because of, this is a 21 and older bill. There are people in college under the age of that, and that's something we do need to keep in mind, which is why it is designated special or sensitive area. And I want to make clear too, opting out, or these cities who are opting out, does not mean people can't use it and smoke it. It means they can't buy it or grow it there. So let's be very clear that it's not like they say, oh, opting out, it's not going to happen in our community. Nope, it just means you drive over to Kendall or McHenry, you buy it, you bring it back, and you smoke it, whether it's in a park or something, which is why I would advocate that we do need to pass zoning and have our taxes so we can pay for our enforcement. So again, opting out does not mean people can't use it, it just means you're not buying it right there. And then the last thing I want to put on here is that the Colorado quote you gave is just inaccurate. The Denver Post posted on May 22nd, 2019, 18 dispensaries in Colorado. 6 of them opened in 2018. They employed more than 700 people, and in 2019 they had record-breaking sales. That's just the
But
fact.
there's still only those 2 counties that are still opted in.
Well, I'm
You guys can argue about that later. You guys, if you want, then you can do that. I'm going to let David on.
Just a couple of housekeeping things, because I just want to make sure that the committee and the board members are aware that the public hearing of the commissions on the 19th. I would encourage anybody who has any comments, things that were made today, perhaps to email those to Colin to submit to the public record on Tuesday. Between the commission and the committee, which is on the 10th, when those comments actually come back to this committee, there's about 13 business days to kind of look at those. And then between the land use and county board, there's about 6 business days to decide, for the committee to decide what changes they want made to get to the board, depending upon which direction the board's going to go. So we are under kind of a time constraint here to get to a January 1 kind of deadline by the state. So again, I would encourage anybody who's made comments here today to email those to Colin, so we don't miss anything, get those on the public record.
And just so everyone is clear, when David says the 19th, it's at the PZC, right, David?
That's correct.
So that's at 6:30?
Yes.
PM. So that's when the public hearing will be for the discussion on the zoning changes. And so we're not scheduled to actually vote, though, on the zoning or the tax until our December county board meeting. So they're, again, at the next land use meeting, more discussion will continue, which I know Tyler loves. And so, there is time for everyone to think about it.
All right. Jackie, last comment?
Yeah, just last question. I know the idea of the special use permit is kind of like our safety, I guess, if you will, to not allow a dispensary to open very close to a high school. My concern has been with other land use cases that we've had on the county board when we haven't approved it. I can never remember if it was a map amendment, a zoning amendment, a special use permit. I'm thinking it wasn't special use, but I'm thinking back to the case of the quarry guy on 111 and neighbor Plainfield that wanted to crush concrete. The guy across the street was allowed to do it, but we wouldn't let this guy do it. And was that a special use permit, do you guys recall? I know there was a lawsuit that came from it. Or was it a map amendment?
I don't have this.
It was special use? Because if that's the case, then we could still even get into trouble with the idea of voting no on a special use permit, Rachel. Because we've had these cases before where we voted no and then the person took it to court and they got it reversed. Lenny's is another example, although I was thinking specifically of like a not in my backyard thing.
Well, they still have to be within the state statute, 2,500 feet from a...
Right, but Ray was saying there are certain areas
That are
where
just outside.
it would meet that qualification, but it would still be fairly close to a high school. I mean, I don't really like the fact that there's a pawn shop across the street from our high school. I really don't. That sells guns. I mean, I just think, you know, it's a bad message. But because the pawn shop was there first, apparently there's not really anything that can be done about it, not legally. But yeah, so I'm just, I will say that I do have some concerns with, but to other points that have been made, especially by people on our committee here, you know, there's probably 20-25% of high school kids are already smoking pot. You know, they're already doing it. I don't know that this is going to enhance it or decrease it either.
Gloria.
I just had I thought I read in the state statute somewhere that too, when you have if communities have smoke-free zones, it's also going to go towards marijuana too. So it's public entities, parks, and have your smoke-free zones and it qualifies.
You can bring your six-pack of beer, but don't bring your joint.
Most of them it's not so prohibited, so.
I know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for a nice, lively discussion. So moving on, we have reports, communications, and correspondence. First off, I have nothing. Next up, under committee members, so Rachel has.
Well, I guess I would like to offer this as new business.